Here we go. All right. Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening. Welcome down the Security Rabbit Hole to yet another edition of the Down the Security Rabbit Hole podcast, the cybersecurity industry's favorite podcast, because everybody wants to be on the show. And today, Seth, it's your turn. So, real quick, before we get diving too far, I want to keep saying thanks for everybody that's giving us reviews and likes and follows and whatnot. Keep that up. The way that people learn about this podcast and the way that people get to know that we exist is when you repost us on LinkedIn, help us with the likes and reviews and such on whatever platform you're on, because that circulates and gets us to the top. And I really appreciate it. I know everybody else on this podcast really appreciates it too. But today it's about, once again, about AI. But if you look at the title of this pod and you're like, what are they going to talk about? Well, hi, Seth.
Hello.
All right. Give everybody a little of who you are and what you do, and then we will dive in.
Sounds great. Me personally, 25 years in security now. I spent about a decade at the NSA. I spent roughly another decade at Mandiant.
You're one of those.
I am one of those. I'm a proud ex-Mandianter. Joined fairly early in that, maybe 50 people or so when I joined. So I got to go on a great journey there. See lots and lots of cool stuff. And then let's see. Then I spent a few years at Facebook, supporting what are roughly their business unit level CISOs. And then left to start Embed. And you want me to give a quick rundown on what we do?
I would love to. So I'd love to hear about Embed, because you just gave me like the big arc of awesome jobs.
Yeah.
And the pot of gold you just landed in, I want to hear what that is.
Yeah. So at Embed, we're looking to solve a problem that I've actually felt, I've lived through, I've watched, I've kind of helped tinker with folks, and that is security operations. Just watching security operations teams at companies, at MSSPs and MDRs, and just watching the repetitive nature of what it is they do. A decade or so ago, when SOAR hit the market, I was like, this is exactly what we need. I was like, this is totally going to solve these problems. A decade on, the marketing promises never really quite delivered.
Wait, hold on. I want to know just how shocked you are by this, that the marketing promise of cybersecurity did not deliver.
Yeah. I guess my surprise is not super high. But to be honest, I was pretty positive about what I was seeing early on, and it just never quite delivered. So an old coworker of mine and I came together and we said, hey, there's been some changes in the market. We're super passionate about this problem, and we actually think we're going to be able to come up with something that really moves the needle. And so we left our roles and started Embed to tackle effectively alert overload and the problems that come and surround that.
All right, well, let's start with this then. As I aptly titled this pod, there has been a lot of security leaders, SOC leaders, cyber defense center leaders that have been told, hey, I've got a product for you. It's going to eliminate the need for people altogether. Forget the SIM source stuff. That's all old technology. AI is the future. And while I am on board, there's a lot of awesome things AI can do. One thing I do not think it can do is replace all those happy people that sit and stare at screens all day in like the full capacity replacements. What do you think?
Yeah, that is not our philosophy and hasn't been our philosophy since the beginning. So we actually did a blog post on this maybe a year and a half ago, where it was basically like, should I be worried about my career in security? And our answer is no. We do think that people's roles are going to evolve, and we hope that they evolve in a very positive way, which is taking a bunch of the mundane work off of their plates. But that human ingenuity, that human thought process, bringing that stuff in, it's definitely still necessary in our opinion.
Yeah, I like that. I anytime somebody tells me we're going to replace humans, my first thought is cool if it's for all the things that we don't want to do anymore, because we're sick of doing it. And then my second reaction is, okay, show me. There's been a lot of sizzle, right? Very little meat behind that. I just watched the most insane movie the other night. Total sidebar, sorry, but like it's called Balls Up with Mark Wahlberg, and like if you've never seen it, it's about World Cup soccer and two guys that are just like these hapless pitchmen for adult.
Yeah, make sure you get the parental advisory warning on that for anybody that's thinking about going to
Yeah. It's definitely not like kid friendly. It's got some adult humor, but it is absolutely hysterical. And like the running theme through the movie is like one's the sizzle, one's the steak, and they learn that they need each other. So like there's been a lot of sizzle in the market. Like there's been tons of hype. Everybody's got the answer, and much like in times before, I want to be hopeful, but I'm also fairly realistic in that there are limitations on what AI is going to do for us. And I want to be realistic about what we tell people, because it's not just a repeat of SOAR, right? There's so much better stuff that's going to hopefully come with this. The technology is different. It's a much wider pool of possibility, but to say that, suddenly let's eliminate humans, I feel like is disingenuous, probably at best.
Yeah, I think actually I see this frequently where people are like, oh, we're 99% accurate just across the board, blanket statement, right? And my co-founder Jeff always likes to say, if that was really true, like the problem would be solved and none of us would be sitting here talking about this.
Yeah, so, right.
If your AI SOC vendor is saying they're 99% accurate on anything and 100% of alerts, you can give it, like, they're feeding it to you. Like that's just reality.
There's a really good line from a really good movie. Like 60% of the time, it works 100% of the time. Yeah, we could do Anchorman quotes all day long. Listen, I think that I think we talked about this when we were setting this pod up. There's a framework within which I'm starting to really get comfortable. It's like these 5 prongs, or maybe 5 metrics that you think about, like as technology evolves for us in the operational sense, right? To make cyber defense, security operations faster. And the 2 that we initially had a problem with when it was just analysts looking at screens is velocity and volume, right? And as we added more hardware, volume went up, and then we cloud and now AI, velocity shot up, and now they're going up at the same pace. So they're both off the top of the chart and into some sort of stratospheric level where I don't think there's anybody that's going to argue like put humans back on and we'll do manual correlation. Like that hasn't existed for 15 years. Yeah. However, with technology, and you said it right, 99% accuracy, comes the accuracy and precision question. I think earlier AI iterations were hit or miss on accuracy, and by nature, like outside the bullseye half the time on precision, which means that like they could 50-50 get the answer right, but they would get to it in different ways, and it wasn't repeatable work, which is terrifying if you're trying to put something in front of a lawyer, right? As in, like, this is what I know for truth. And I think the last bit of it is the 5th prong in this, and I think this is the one that sits on top of the other 4, is this concept of clarity. Like, yes, you can take an alert correlated to another one, pull in some context from here, pull in some context from here, network endpoint, blah, blah, applications, identity, blah, blah. But you've now solved or addressed that. What I want to know is, why did this happen? What else happened? Where did it go? Like, how big is the problem? Should I still be worried? And we're nowhere near that yet.
But am I
right, first of all?
Oh, sorry. I was just going to say, but isn't that AI strength, is being able to look very broadly pretty quickly?
Is it?
Yeah, I mean, I do think it can. So you are right, Jim. Like AI gives you the ability to look across and or reason about a much larger corpus of data than what you could do in other types of technologies. But that still leaves you with this, what I think Rafael is getting to, which is how did you come to that conclusion, right? So I've given you tons and tons of data, but like, how did you get there? And then if I give you that same data many times, are you actually going to come to the same conclusion, or just each time you come to a conclusion, but it's different, right? And I think he's really tapping on the door of what I think makes this a really hard problem. Because I think we can all go out and we can create a prompt and we can toss in an alert into that prompt, and then we can say, please reason about this. And it might come up with something kind of neat, might come up with something cool, and something we kind of agree with, kind of don't. But then if we run it through again, we're going to get a different answer, and it'll look different. It'll feel different. Maybe the overall decision is the same, but so you end up with this weird thing. So at Embed, we've come up with what the operating principle we've been using since the beginning is like, a lot of people kind of think like trust in a system comes just purely from accuracy. Does it always get the right answer? And I think no, or we think no as a company. And the way that we think about it is trust is accuracy, yes, but it's also consistency and then transparency, right? So not only do you get the right answer, but can you reproduce that right answer? And then are you telling me how you came to that answer? Yeah. And that's critical, in my opinion, to get security people to want to adopt this and trust it.
Don't we have similar problems though with people? I mean, same person looking at the same data 2, 3, 4 different times could potentially come up with different responses, different outputs. I mean, we put a lot of pressure on AI to be right 100% of the time, right? We say, oh, well, it's non-deterministic. Yes, so are people. Like, even take 3 different people, give them the exact same data, they'll come out with way different answers and responses, right, for that same stuff. So, I mean, aren't we seeing the same thing with AI? Like, we haven't fixed anything there. We still have bias and all this other stuff that we say we get rid of, but we still could come up with different answers. At least we can more easily show our work, I guess, as a person versus AI. I don't know what happened once I sent that prompt off.
Yep. I think it's kind of interesting. My co-founder Jeff and I had this discussion really early on, and actually I haven't gotten the pushback that I assumed I would from the security industry, which is I thought it would be a lot like Tesla and the auto driving cars, right? I think we hold that auto driving car to a much higher standard than we hold a human. And so I was expecting the same kind of thing on the AI side of like, hey, we can't be wrong, even though a human can be wrong. But I haven't gotten quite that pushback. But from an MSP, MDRs that we work with, it's exactly that they're after, James, which is, hey, we have a lot of inconsistency between analysts. And so we really want to have a base level of consistency that we're working with. So interesting there.
I had 2 questions for you. One is, when you say, like, I get repeatability, but being able to prove what you did, determine what you did, sounds more like emphasis on forensics as opposed to dealing with the problem. It sounds a little bit after the fact to me. Am I misunderstanding that? Because I think when there's
it's auditability, Jim. Isn't that what you're looking for? You're asking for auditability. Show me how you got your answer. I'd like to know.
Yeah, I mean, how often is that the case? When I know when you have a false positive, like you take action on a collection of information, different analysts have different perspectives. You kind of come together and say, okay, I think this is happening. We need to shut down X kind of thing. And it turns out you just shut down the manufacturing plant for no reason, right? So I can see that from an auditability, from a reportability or a forensics scenario. But don't you see value of AI on the upfront, sort of like in the early days of enrichment activities and early days of automation to accelerate these things? Don't we see it more being value on the front end as opposed to worrying about it being able to prove its work? Because it's non-deterministic. I get it.
Yeah, well, I think that's the hard part of what, right? I think if people are literally just using LLMs in their AI SOC, like that, I'd say be super skeptical, be really concerned. There's a lot more that we've put into this than just throwing things at an LLM. And so we're taking that non-deterministic and we're trying to minimize the impact of that non-deterministic on the outcomes of things. And so part of that is, can we show the evidence of how we arrived at the decision that we want? So ultimately at Embed, we want to sort of summarize things in a way that makes it really easy for people to say, like, I agree or disagree with your decision. But if we get that analyst that's like, oh, like prove it to me. Like why did you come to this decision? We don't want it to be like those early AI ML products where like it said it was bad, and then you were like, I don't know why it said it was bad, so I got to go redo the whole investigation to figure out why it thought it was bad. And so that's why we're trying to like make sure that we're exposing what is going into this, where the query is coming from, what data did we find, how is it that we're using it, what old memories are we bringing in, like that kind of stuff. And then you can leverage that to say, like, if you really want to deep dive. Now, you shouldn't be doing that on every triage, right?
Right. Yeah. I think that's where I start to separate the two, sort of a pre-event and post-event kind of arc. You know what I mean?
Yep.
So just because former NSA guy, a lot of intelligence, maybe not a lot of intelligence, but there is AI being used in intelligence communities for arguably some of the same purposes you would use AI and sort of threat detection and threat analysis. So do you see maybe AI being more useful in a SOC scenario, just from a combination of intelligence through threat hunting, as opposed to maybe just dealing with SOC activities?
I'm not sure I follow. Sorry.
In other words, pre-event, like is like what Raph was talking about earlier, is I want to know all these different things, right? So AI can be good at trying to connect these dots and at least sort of, bring a color up on your dashboard saying, hey, I'm sensing this, kind of like, woo, and saying, I'm suspecting this activity, and maybe help direct more specific type of investigative activities or that nature. Do you see AI playing a role in that space?
I do, if I follow correctly, I do. I mean, ultimately, like, we have multiple decisions that come out of Embed's engine when looking at these things, which is basically, hey, like, I think you can ignore this. You don't need to worry about it. It's just noise. This is actually malicious, and you probably really need to take action. And then there's that concept of like inconclusive, right? Which is, hey, I tried to gather a bunch of data, but I'm still kind of left like wondering, like, a human needs to come in here and make these last, connect the dots on these final things. And so our goal really is to escalate those things, kind of like you're saying, like bring a highlight to that, but not in a sense that like we're looking for the needle in the haystack to tell you. It's like, hey, we're looking at all of these things, and these are the ones that need to come up. So it's less about like that needle in the haystack and more like we looked at everything, and these are the ones we think you should pay attention.
I think that's going to be pretty powerful, if you're doing that, because I think we have everything tell us sort of the needle in the haystack. Right? I mean, we just got to find the needle. We've been given the shape of the needle, its length, size, and we know what haystack it's in. Sometimes we're not even paying attention to the haystack, right? So I think that has a pretty interesting sort of argument there, because sometimes it's the bigger picture, like Raph was saying, that wider perspective, kind of that 100,000 foot view. I think it's going to make a big difference.
Yeah,
I'm still a little bit. It's not even. The word's not skeptical. What I want to know is, give me the places where this new line of technology is best used, where it's useful, and where like it shouldn't be applied. And I've asked that a bunch of times. I don't really ever get a great answer, and it's not just because I'm trying to avoid getting the salesperson answer. No offense to salespeople, but you all try to. Everybody try to tell me like, hey, no, it's applicable to everything. It's not, right? Yeah. So there are certain things non-deterministic platforms like an AI are good at. There are certain things like the agentic conversation becomes very, very narrow. AI becomes good at. Seth, where is, in terms of let's take Jim's take Jim's line of thinking. Left a bang, and right a bang, right? We're talking about SOC, so we're talking about that little narrow time window when we notice it, hopefully before it goes kaboom, and then as it's happening afterwards. What are the specific? Where is this type of technology best, and then at what tasks is it the best at?
Yeah, it's a good question. It's pretty broad, but it's going to be best at like it's going to be best at like focused problems, but not like but areas where you want flexibility. So think about like a triage, right? Like I think this is why we've seen so many companies pop up in the world of triage, is because hey, triage is fairly deterministic, but you can't put it in a playbook like SOAR. It's if you do that, then you're only going to catch the one thing you know about, right? So like you get that creativity of the LLM and the rest of that stuff by giving it the right tools or agents or whatever you want to leverage and use. And then it can pick those things and apply them. And I think that gives you a ton of flexibility within a confined space. Now, where I don't think it's great, at least not yet, in my personal opinion, is spots where you need like real, true creativity, right? So I think back to some of the things like at Mandiant, right? When we had a compromise and it's like, okay, this box is compromised, but now you got to figure out, okay, how did they get on the box? And what did they do while they were on the box? And, we had folks at Mandiant that discovered new persistence mechanisms. The LLM isn't going to find something like that. That's where you really need the human to be in there, finding that, pouring through the stuff and linking those things in that way. Doesn't mean it won't get there. It's just not there today.
That's a fantastic example. That is so spot on. You're absolutely right.
Yeah, that is. Okay, so that's good, right? Do you think that the market broadly is repositioning itself that way?
I do think it's starting to sort of reposition itself that way. I think we're starting to see SOC roles evolve. I think we're going to see companies, especially like your MDRs and MSSPs, that are not adopting, building, buying, using this type of stuff. They're going to fall behind, right? And it's not because you don't need humans. It's because they can't do as much with the 50 humans that are doing that work. They have to scale that linearly. With the AI, if they're leveraging that, now they can do 5 times or 10 times as much per person that's there, like that kind of stuff. So I do think we're starting to see it. I do think there's a hype cycle here, though, of us still trying to learn like what it can actually do versus what these companies are telling you it can do.
I want to, if I may, just comment real quickly on something that you said, and I've gotten in discussions about this where you say it's not going to replace jobs, and then when somebody says, well, if you have X amount of work and X minus Y amount of people, right? And you empower them. So effectively that stops growth in the job market because it's being replaced in AI. So the net result is the same kind of thing. And I think there's some young people that I've interacted with that are trying to find their place as they go through this early trail. And they're like worried about by the time they get to that point, there won't be any jobs left because the 50 people are now X minus Y is 0. Right.
Yeah.
And so I think I just wanted to point that out because I do think there's a lot of people in security, especially in the entry level, that are starting to get concerned because how do you keep up with it? And then ones are using it, right? They're just using it to tell them what to do in some cases, which I think I probably have done the same thing if AI was around when I was doing it,
Yeah, the way I think about it for the entry level folks, I think they're in a tough spot, right? It's unknown. I can imagine it's scary, and like you said, will they be able to build the right skills to get to the point where they need to get to before AI takes over? Like I understand that angst for sure, but I don't think if it was like, hey, security is mostly a solved problem, and once you do this, there's nothing left to do. I think it's just like. Raf was saying earlier, you're taking these mundane things off of my plate, but the cool stuff is still there. I think the cool stuff is still definitely there. And I think it can really speed people's learning, right? Like I think they can, rather than it taking years to move between these different levels, maybe they can move between those levels in less than a year or half a year or something, right? Because they're able to learn so much from these things.
Seth, do you believe, like as some others do, that we're effectively going to be able to eliminate the lower tiers of the SOC?
Well, I think it depends on what you define as like the lower tiers of the SOC. I do think there are some pieces and parts that would get eliminated, but I don't think it's like across the board, right? I think tier 1, tier 2, tier 3 is like a way for us to use a language, but it's not all that often, at least at most companies, where people like squarely just fit in one thing, right? People typically move between the different roles and stuff like that. But I think that we're still going to have to understand what it's doing, right? So like there is still an understanding and a need to understand the triage and why things were triaged and why that means it's good or bad, even if something else is doing it. So I think there's going to be a lot more like probably like rather than the tier one analysts sitting down to triage the alert themselves and pull that IP address out and contextualize it in network tools and do all that kind of stuff. I think what you're going to see is them validating the stuff that the LLMs and that the AI SOC tools and stuff like that have done, right? And so now their role is much more like, okay, well, let me poke around at what it's done to make sure that I agree with it. So they're going to need to understand it to do it.
But I'm curious to know, Raph, we talked about this so long ago, the idea of do you build your own SOC or do you outsource it? Does this make it, will we start seeing more people insourcing their SOCs and like, you know what, I'm going to do it myself. I got AI to help me. Like, why would I go pay some other vendor to do this? I mean, it's the cloud thing all over again. I went to cloud. No, I'm bringing it back. I went to managed SOC. Nope, I'm bringing that back. Like if I don't need one of the 5 experts in SOC work to be able to do my stuff, does that change the tone?
I'm gonna let you answer this, Seth, because you guys know my opinion on this.
So I'm a big fan of MDRs and MSSPs and stuff like that. Like I am a lifelong security person, but I don't think that every company needs to try to find and hire security experts and keep them happy and employed and the rest of that stuff. So I think there's a lot of value in saying, hey, I'm going to let some other folks take care of this. But I do think there are a number of organizations that have outsourced, not because it's what they want to do, but it's because it's what they have to do for right now. And so I do think for those organizations, this technology does allow them to bring that back in-house and manage it there. So
you think that's going to create a trend to pull it back in?
I do think for organizations that are outsourcing because they have to, not because they want to.
Wow. I think I'm probably on the same plane as Raph on this one. I think it still represents an investment. You have to still get the right people. I think it's going to be very interesting. But I get it when you say if a company didn't want to outsource in the first place, now they have a path to do it internally.
I think that Seth, Jim and Seth, I think that number is relatively small. The number of companies that had to, I think it's relatively small. I don't think it'll make a significant dent. And if we're talking about the whole, I think what we're going to end up with is, I've said this before. I probably said it 10 years ago, and I'm going to say it tomorrow. The number every day I wake up, there's probably a few less companies that should have their own SOC. It's because no matter how amazing the technology, Seth, you and your peers put out into the market, it does not solve the fundamental stuff that's between the ears. And technology is just a piece of it. You need process, you need funding, you need pipelines and pathways, you need process, right? And you're going to have that human. I don't think that anytime before I retire, or maybe before they put me in the ground, we're going to replace all security with robots or computers. There's just too much that humans do that is unique to us in the ability to have a hunch, a gut feeling, and just take a chance. And if we're talking about do we need it? Should it be a managed service? And I think that kind of stuff doesn't scale well inside of an organization. It just doesn't. You spend a lot of money as a company to effectively, hopefully, never have to use it. Right? It's like writing a really big insurance check. Paying a really and hoping that it doesn't have, but it's not insurance you're buying. You're spinning up a really big team and going, man, I hope they never find anything or end up with having to actually go do that bad day.
I think
that's my opinion.
I'm not advocating for people to bring their SOC in house. I'm just saying a lot of the reason people didn't do that was because I can't go find 50 people qualified to go work my stuff. And if I only need 2 people to do it because AI can do the rest, it becomes much less barrier to spin that up. And look, do you think people are outsourcing development work as much? The CEOs are writing their applications now. Right? Like, I mean, we're getting into a world where everybody and their brother and sister are like, listen, I can write that production app. We'll get us up and going in no time. Like, no, say goodbye to the SDLC and every other piece that happened. We're just going to create it. We'll spin it up. We'll push it to production. We're good to go.
James, I love you to death, but as somebody that lives in AppSec, I know you don't mean a damn thing you just said.
No, I mean, people are doing that. Don't kid yourself.
They're doing it. I guess whether it's a good idea or not.
No, it's not a good idea. I'm just saying, like, this is what's happening. Just the same to the point of, I'm not saying it's a good idea to spin up your own SOC. I'm just saying, like, look, if the means are there, why are people not everybody, but some people are going to make that choice.
It gives optionality, right? Like
yeah.
Right now, it's hard to have that optionality. And to be honest, like not all MSSPs, MDRs are like created equal, right? So a lot of folks that I talk to are like, I feel like my MSSP is just like a turnaround type of thing, right? It sends them a ticket and then they say, I think this is bad, but you got to figure out the rest of it. So then it comes back to them and they got to figure it out, right? And so it's like, it just depends.
And that is a different, but also very relevant conversation. All right. We're going to end it there. Seth, it's been awesome. Where do people find out more about what you do?
Thanks.
The company.
Yeah, you can visit us at embedsecurity.com and
cool. Not .ai.
Not we own .ai, but we didn't do that one.
Thank you.
he's bought into AI, but he hasn't bought into AI.
That's right.
Right. Like, listen, I'll get the domain name, but our main things.com. Thank you.
Thanks for being on the show, Seth. It's been great. I'm hoping people go check out what you guys do because it sounds interesting. And again, technology is one thing, but actually being able to match what's between our ears, at least for most of us, is probably going to be the challenge of the lifetime of several generations. So anyway, James, thanks for being back, guys. Folks, thank you so much for listening to another Down the Security Rabbit Hole podcast. I hope you've enjoyed it. And until next time, we'll see you another time, another place on another Down the Security Rabbit Hole podcast. Ciao.